Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Mahesh Jade. Hi Mahesh, welcome back.
Hey Vasco, happy to be here again.
So Mahesh, let's dive into change, and of course we like to call it change leadership because after all, as Scrum Masters, we are very often involved in those change processes that happen in organizations, whether it's personal, team level, organizational level, there's always something going on. So walk us through one of those stories, a change process you were involved with, and especially explain to us what were those tips, those tricks, those techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think being a Scrum Master and Agilist, I think it is a journey to learn better ways of bringing in the change. And in that journey, I think when I started, I remember as a facilitator, I have heard at some point of time that we have to be really vulnerable. And that is a tough quality to have. Sometimes we will try to be vulnerable. We'll try to disassociate ourselves from the outcome of that meeting or that particular initiative, but we still have to go about that. And that is a space I think we evolve over the period of time. And so generally how I look at it is I try to adapt the conversation on the way. I get started with something and I try to multiply things on the way. So I do not stick to what I have in the beginning into my mind when I'm proposing some change so it applies in a very generic way to any particular conversation or to a particular change that we want to bring in. So I think one of the things that helped me is that if I disassociate myself from the outcome of that particular thing, that goes really well.
So you talked about different things that I really want to explore. Like so far, we are very much in the generics. So what does it mean when you're working in a change process, right? You know, agile adoption, helping the team adopt some new practices, whatever that kind of change might be. What do you mean by being vulnerable in that context?
Yeah. So I think I remember one of the incident when so we were in one particular project and in one particular organization, we used to have a particular storyboard and where we have mapped some stories for particular iterations. And we were observing that every sprint after sprint and iteration after iteration, those stories are moving to the right. And people are saying, we need some more time or we need to split the story at the end of the iteration. And there we wanted to bring some change. And so I think at that moment, I remember the vulnerability really came into the picture and we did not know how to go about it, but we started these conversations in the retrospectives and other forums. And then we thought maybe we are not having right work in progress limits. So let's try that out. So we started with that. We started showing some results and we did not attach ourselves with the outcome. And after 2 sprints, we realized that, okay, limiting the epics that we pull in for a particular iteration is helping us. So we started continuing with that practice. So I think this has stayed our notion that we stay very vulnerable. We just propose something. We go about that, experiment that for 1 or 2 weeks, and we just take a idea about the progression. If we are going in the right direction, it's okay to continue, or we are okay to discontinue as well.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, adopting something new, whatever, it might be agile, it might be just a practice, like you said, limiting the epics in progress for a particular team. We don't really know how that will impact other aspects of the process. Like, for example, the example you gave basically said, okay, so we limit the work in progress, fine, but then there's decisions, there's meetings, there's conflicts that may emerge from having that limit, right? And we need to be able to be aware of that. And as you said very early on the Monday episode, it's all about context. Sometimes the WIP limits are just the right solution, and sometimes when you start to implement WIP limits, you start to get pushback, you start to get conflict in the decision-making process. So as far as I understand, and I wanted to hear your perspective, being vulnerable in this context is to accept that even the best ideas might fail, and we need to be ready to kind of change and try something else. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That completely resonates.
So as we do that, as we start proposing ideas or just pick up the ideas that the team members themselves propose, there is a problem though, because there's this expectation that whatever we try will work, right? And it might not even be from the team; it might just be from management. So how do you manage those expectations? Because it's not only about the team succeeding, that's important, obviously. It's also about how the people around the team react to the things that we try.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key things that comes into my mind at this moment is how are we collaborating around those ideas? So if we are looking at any particular situation or we are trying to brainstorm around that, have we got the right set of stakeholders or right set of people into that meeting where we can really validate and where we can really focus on the bigger picture than only a part of the problem? So I think we have been doing that into our retrospectives. We try to invite some of the other people who are really not working with us and day in and day out. But then when we get into a conversation, I think we get an idea about the bigger picture, and that have helped us in multiple contexts to be vulnerable as well as to have an eye on big picture, so that whatever we come out with, it is aligning with the aspirations or the needs of the system as a whole, and not just a part of a problem.
Yeah, I'd really like that idea of just using the retrospective as a way to assess the impact outside even the team, because very often we consider the retrospective that is only for the team, and that might be so. You can still have that, but there's an important aspect of any change to understand what are the impacts outside the immediate borders of the team, right?
Yeah. And one key thing I think I have learned is that being a Scrum Master over the period of time, when we are becoming better at leading the change, we have to be learning more about the coaching aspects of the team, or maybe some of the transactional analysis, as we call. So we are all working with human and epics around us. So when we are trying to bring about any change, if we try to become more emotionally intelligent, I think that goes very long way. Because, and one of the things I have learned is that when we start accepting and celebrating ideas of others, that really starts showing very nice results into this process of change, because then people feel that they are not just part of the change, but they are originator of the change as well. And that just distributes the ownership among the larger crowd. And that have been my learning, that whenever I'm going for a change, I try to encourage ideas from others, and whenever we get a right idea in front of in the right context, we just try to start celebrating that idea and start experimenting around it.
Try to encourage ideas from others. Yeah, spoken like a true Scrum Master. Thank you very much, Mahesh.
Absolutely, Vasco. So nice to have you and to be speaking here.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.